A glimpse into the eyes of the mentally ill. My first hospitalization. I'm 19, but I'm not normal by any means. I had an acquired brain injury at the age of 3 and lost all social skills, and had deficits in other areas too. I don't have very many friends because of my lack of social skills, which contributes to my depression and anxiety. I've honestly had anxiety since the injury, and depression since 3rd grade, maybe even before that, but I wasn't diagnosed with either until I was 12 years old, and my parents could no longer deny that those cuts and scratches were self-inflicted, not from the cat or from playing in the woods near the sticker bushes, like I said. At this point, I have gone to multiple therapists and am on antidepressants. Cumulatively, this has helped in subtle ways. I still have very few friends. I still struggle a lot with anxiety, and depression still gets the best of me most days. But maybe without all that, I wouldn't have told my anxiety where to go and joined that sport that sounded fun in high school. Maybe I wouldn't have joined that club or taken that World Comm class, knowing I'd have to speak in front of the entire class. Of many whom bullied me until they realized I didn't care because it was a reflection of their own insecurities. So was I stable? Not by a long shot, but I could have been much worse. I had no idea what was coming, though. I thought everything was going okay. I was house/dog sitting for a friend who was on vacation, so I hadn't talked to any of my friends/family for a few days. At first, everything was going well. I had a routine set between taking the dog out and getting to/from school. I was getting my homework done. Everything seemed okay, but then I suddenly got this idea in my head that I had to kill myself. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the thought out of my head. I couldn't sleep either. I hadn't slept in 2 days, not a wink. I just laid in bed, curled up with the dog until my alarm clock went off. After the 2 days, it was the 4th of July, and I was to go home for fireworks and s'mores with my family. I remember being really cold for some reason, and my grandma pointing out my heavy sweatshirt. I just shrugged it off and said it was cold that night. Eventually, though, I couldn't pretend to be okay any longer and went in my room. My dad came in the house about 10 minutes later and told me he was really worried about me. He said he didn't know what was wrong, but he knew something was, and I could talk to him no matter what it was. I kept pushing him away, insisting nothing was wrong. After all, once I figured out how I could kill myself, it would all be okay. He kept pushing and telling me I was lying and I was not okay. He wouldn't give it up, so after about 20 minutes, I said, "Fine, I can't stop thinking about killing myself." He said he was taking me to the hospital, and I was ashamed and terrified. I just sat and stared straight ahead the entire hour it took to get there, as our local hospital had no psych ward. I hadn't been in the hospital since I was 3 prior to this, and one of the first things that happened was a nurse or CNA walked me down to the bathroom and made me take all of my clothes off, bra and underwear included, and pee in a cup, all while she watched. This made me feel even worse. I was a relatively normal, independent 19-year-old being forced to get naked and go to the bathroom in front of a stranger. I tried to pee, but I couldn't with her standing over me watching. I told her this and apologized, but she got mad and said I couldn't hide anything because they already drew my blood and the drugs would show up there too. I thought, drugs? No, I don't do drugs. I'm terrified of them. I've seen what they do to people. I wouldn't touch them. I didn't say this, though, because I know that legitimate addicts say these things. I knew I wouldn't be believed, and she would just make a smart remark about all addicts saying the same thing. Somehow, I finally did pee, and then I was sent back to lay on an ER bed for hours in paper scrubs without even my underwear beneath them. I lay there and stared at the wall well into the middle of the night until they finally came and took me to the psych ward. Again, I had to strip, but at least this time I got my bra and underwear back, and at least got some normal cloth scrubs. The nurses laughed at me when I said I was in college. They said something along the lines of me being crazy, and I will never amount to anything since I was in there. Then they told me to go to bed, and I was not to leave my room until called for breakfast in the morning, or there would be consequences. I think I finally cried myself to sleep, but I laid there and screamed, cried, punched, kicked, and hit my head against the wall for hours. No one ever came. One time, a nurse came on the intercom and told me I needed to calm down, which obviously didn't help. I was terrified. I had never been in a psych ward before. I thought it would be just like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was almost certain a group of large, strong men would come into my room and rape me and beat me to death, and the nurses obviously didn't care. I wanted to die, but not painfully and violently. I was sure I would be raped and beaten and left to slowly die from my injuries. When I was called to breakfast, I went down and was pleasantly surprised to find that those big men who looked like they were ready to murder anyone who crossed their path weren't there. I was the youngest patient there, but there were men and women of all ages. Some were suicidal like me. One had just been released to the psych floor from the ICU after a drug overdose. We were all different and all had different stories. We didn't all agree with each other on everything, but we understood each other's suffering. I'm actually still friends with the lady I met in there today. I jokingly call her my nuthouse mom. She reached out to me when I felt so undeserving of it. I felt safer after breakfast, but I still went to my room, crawled back under the covers, and started crying again because I felt so worthless and was so ashamed of myself. Then I decided I wanted to take a shower. I went and asked if I could and was told no because the doctors would be coming and I needed to see the doctor. Okay, understandable, so I went back to bed. I was still crying when the psychiatrist came, so I wouldn't uncover my face. I hadn't cried in front of people since I was 7 years old. My family, whether knowingly or not, had taught me that crying was bad, sadness was bad, and anger was definitely bad. It was wrong to feel anger. I had a doctor and a nurse in my room, and nowhere to escape where I could cry privately, so I had to stay under the covers. I couldn't show my face. This is obviously an odd behavior when someone is trying to talk to you. So the psychiatrist began rattling off serious disorders, some of which I was unfamiliar with. Schizoaffective disorder, BPD, schizotypal personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, agoraphobia, avoidant personality disorder, DID, and possibly others. I knew what many of them were, though, and from what I understood, this man I just met was saying I hallucinate, I'm delusional, and I'm not able to function, and that was not the case. I was thinking irrationally by wanting to end my life, but not any of the things he was saying about me. I spent most of the rest of the day in bed trying to find a way to cut myself, crying, cussing, and punching myself and the walls. It got to where I couldn't take it anymore. I asked the nurse if I could have something for anxiety, and she just shrugged her shoulders. I told her I really needed something, and I told her I'd heard other patients say they take Xanax, Ativan, or Klonopin for anxiety, and asked if I could have something like that. She said I'd have to talk to the doctor in the morning. He ended up giving me Klonopin PRN. I actually took it twice, but I could have had it more often than that. The 2 times I did ask for it, they acted like I was drug seeking. At some point after this, though, they took me over to 5A, where the more severely ill patients are. Once over there, they begged me to take it, even if I was calm and didn't need it. They got mad when I refused it. At this point, it had been about 3 days, and they finally let me take a shower. I felt disgusting. I normally bathed every day, brushed my teeth twice a day, and shaved at least every couple days. I still, of course, couldn't shave, but I was glad I got to take a shower and change clothes. When the psychiatrist came, I wasn't crying, so I looked at him, face uncovered, and talked to him like a normal person. I think he was surprised at the big change in me. He said I was so different and he didn't know what to think. He said he was really questioning the possible diagnoses he had come up with for me. I explained to him that in my family, you don't let anyone see you cry. You don't show negative emotions, and it's not okay to be angry. Anger is bad. The times I remember crying as a little kid, I was told to quit being dramatic, toughen up, or that's how life goes. At first, I decided that meant crying was never okay. Then I realized if I did it alone, no one would know about it, and I felt better afterwards, so it was okay to cry alone. I'm good at silent crying for that reason. I told him that's why I kept my face covered. He probably knew I was crying, but he at least couldn't see the tears. This really helped him understand me. He started directing questions to me more, talking to me more instead of to the nurses or my family when they were there. I also told him how anger was considered bad in my family. I was taught to associate anger with my uncle binge drinking, doing drugs, destroying property, and getting multiple assault charges and DUI charges. It helped me realize anger is not bad or wrong. You can be angry about something without destroying yourself and everything and everyone around you. I realized it's okay to feel angry. It's not feeling the emotion itself that is bad, but how you choose to act when feeling angry. I realized anger is just a feeling, it's not a negative action. I learned that my uncle's behavior is a response to anger, not the definition of anger itself. I was doing much better at this point, but still on the A side with patients who were doing worse than me. Many of these patients were confused and scared. Some of them sat alone hallucinating. One patient sitting near me pointed ahead of me, there was nothing there, and said, "Purple eyes, yellow lips, he must have braces." Obviously, it didn't make any sense, and I knew there wasn't really any person there, but there was no reason for me to just sit there and ignore him when that's probably what had happened to him all his life. I said, "Oh, you're right, who is he? I don't think I've ever met him." His eyes lit up and he said something to me. Whatever it wasn't a logical answer, but I went along with it, and he smiled and started talking more. None of it made sense, but he was happy, so I went along with it. A nurse pointed at us and made fun of us. She said something about me being so dumb I didn't know he was hallucinating, thinking I wasn't paying attention to her. It was bad enough knowing that I was being made fun of, but making fun of someone who might not understand what you're doing, might not be able to defend themselves if they do, is awful. I called the employees out multiple times for making fun of people or just being rude to us for no reason, and each time I was either told to sit down and shut up, or I was given an insincere apology, then laughed at as I walked away. Why is it that when hospitalized for a physical illness, you are treated with such compassion and respect, but God forbid something goes wrong with your brain, then you're just a wild animal who must be controlled? Only when our brains are sick do people say, "Just another junkie," or "haha, he's off his meds again."